Whenever I get talking to people about DOS games that they played when they were young, they usually mention titles like Commander Keen, Just Jackrabbit, Scorched Earth, Wolfenstein. But more often than not, they'll mention some obscure little shareware puzzle game and they just get euphoric. Their face lights up and they just get so excited thinking about the hours upon hours that they sank into this cozy little game. That's what I've tried to capture today. I've tried to think of 10 DOS puzzle games. They're a little bit obscure, that all have something distinctive about them and that you can just pick up and play whenever you have time. Have a look and let me know what you think. Lexi-Cross, 1991. Lexi-Cross is a wonderful game. The graphics in this game, when I was a kid, I thought these graphics were incredible. Now that I'm in my 30s, I still think these graphics are incredible. Considering this game came out in 1991, I cannot believe how good they are, especially for a puzzle game. There are so many details that still make it fascinating to look at. Basically, you're on a galactic game show, somewhat reminiscent of Wheel of Fortune. You build your own character and bam, you're live on the air, competing against humans, aliens, and robots. For some reason to me, the host looks like Daryl Summers, host of long-running Australian variety show Hey Hey It's Saturday. I legitimately thought this was cyborg Daryl Summers when I was growing up. Each player takes turns revealing tiles, letters, and ultimately works to discover the overarching theme of the puzzle. There are a very large number of puzzle boards, so you're unlikely to get the same one twice. Most of the topics have held up fairly well to time, in my experience. The AI in this game is actually quite good. You're up for a genuine challenge. You can expect each round to take at least 15 minutes, and there are a total of 3 per game. Allow for a full episode to take you up to an hour. The pacing can get a bit tedious at times, but if things are dragging out too much, you can easily just bail after a round or 2. When I was a kid, I was excited to grow up so that I could be a contestant on game shows. It never eventuated, but thank you to Lexi-Cross for enabling and possibly sparking that fantasy. 1993 Triss. 1993. 1993 Triss. Or as I like to call it, Tetris with a gun. So one thing you should know about me is that I love games that a lot of other people think are terrible. Most of the Tetris likes I close soon after opening, but this one riddles me with intrigue. It's not even Tetris really, it's more like columns. But out of the tens if not hundreds of DOS takes on that format, it stands out as one of the most innovative. And it's tricky. For some reason the blocks have colourful flying bugs on them. I don't know why, but hey, why not? There are various power-ups to unlock as you proceed through the game. Look at all these potential power-ups! A lighter, a weight, magic, fish? What is fish? The problem with this game is it's too dang hard and I've honestly never gotten further than the first level. However, I was extremely excited to have a gun, so I am so keen to know what the others do. The gun power-up allows you to use 9 shots to shoot the blocks directly in its line of sight, thereby eliminating them. You need to have a hell of a lot of points to proceed to the next level and obtain access to the next game mechanic. I have to wonder if that's by design, so they didn't have to actually implement the others in time for the shareware release. Meanwhile, the full release is incredibly elusive and I'm not even sure it exists. I mean, I'm not the greatest at this game, obviously, but it really is too hard. If anyone out there manages to utilise the other gimmicks, please tell me. I feel like this is one of those games that with just a few tweaks could have been a classic. Reviews on this game are very polarising. Some are quite diplomatic, others are straight up scathing. I did find this extremely passionate review for it online, which made me laugh hysterically. So that's another point for the game. Anyway, 1993 Triss. A weird one. Give it a shot and let me know if you can get further than I did. Avish! 1993. Oh my goodness, I am such a fan of this game. One day, I plan to make a video all about games published by Bug Multisystem, but in the meantime, Avish, or Avish, searching for the exit. The main character is a likeness of a university instructor the developers had, and I can only hope someone makes such a wonderful DOS game about me one day. First of all, you're a balding, portly gent in his pajamas, and it's really nice to see a protagonist who's not an animal, preteen boy, or a ripped dude for a change. Though his physical condition is somewhat reflected in his ability to take full damage, which is pretty unforgiving. There are over 70 levels included in the game. Each stage commences with a visual overview, and then it's up to the player to make their way through, or face scornful giggles. There are several types of tiles and items to utilise. Expect an array of different gameplay gimmicks that build up as time goes on.
You'll encounter items like umbrellas, bombs, punching gloves, jackhammers, as well as various different tile types. Things get weirder as you go, best demonstrated by this little blobby dude, who eats you. Most of the game is fairly intuitive, but there are a few parts that got me a bit stumped. My advice with Avish is to not immediately overthink things. Follow your instincts first. If you think that the game's being too clever, it might be, but it might not be. Especially towards the beginning, and there's usually a lesson in it regardless. It's challenging, but in a fun way. Don't let the fact that Satan is mysteriously peeping through the occasional wall fool you. And worst case scenario, all the level codes can be found online if you get especially stuck. It's quite endearing with its sound effects, characterizations, and unique mechanics. I couldn't stop thinking about this one after I first played it. Try it out. Deathball Incarnate, 1996. This one's for Amon, who really wanted to kill someone in his puzzle game. This game's weird. This game's edgy 90s weird. You're a sentient ball. You, kill humans. You get covered with blood in the process. It can be a bit challenging, but it's definitely a worthwhile play. You start by selecting one of 3 balls, each of a different size, and each with unique powers. Your goal is to massacre humans in order to harvest their souls, so that you may ascend to the rank of Deathball. Naturally, you get absolutely slathered with blood in the process. You can either cleanse yourself of it, or simply bathe in the horrors of your handless handiwork. Obviously, a huge number of games involve murder as a major mechanic, but there's something that feels quite visceral in this one. It's somewhat unwieldy at first, and it can be difficult to master the controls. However, it's rewarding to get the hang of it, and I imagine it has quite a lot of replay value. This is one game I've never heard anyone else mention, which is kind of a shame really. Clearly a lot of work has gone into it, and honestly, as far as puzzle games go, it's fairly unique and enjoyable. If you associate puzzle games with stagnant stages and boring block matching, maybe try this gruesome little twist on the genre out. It certainly left an impression on me. Degeneration, 1991. Degen is such a good game. It's not your traditional puzzle game, but I really wanted to include opportunities for people to think, puzzle games, not from... Hold on a minute. To be fair, this is probably one of the most well-known games on the list. There are plenty of other puzzle platformers, but this one's much higher on the puzzle element than a lot of them are. You're a courier sent to deliver a package, and are quickly trapped inside a 10-floor building with a ream of genetically engineered creatures to contend with. Despite its somewhat bright and cheery aesthetic, this game is immediately terrifying. It instantly sets a tone and sense of space. And yet again you get a gun. Yes, here we have another puzzle game where you can kill people. There are security systems to disable, bystanders to save, and all sorts of magnificent deaths, like orb absorption, crushing by cylinder, and loads of lasers. As an isometric game, you want to make use of your numpad for the best experience. There's quite a bit of lore lurking in the levels, which you can sink into or skip over for the most part. You can also kill the hostages, which, although ill-advised, is... Look, I'm not gonna lie, when I first played this game, I found it very tempting. Shooting your gun is a very satisfying experience. It's very blammo, which is what you want from a gun, right? I think this game is really well stylized. Its distinctive artistic choices make it immediately recognizable, and I adore the color palette. People always say that it doesn't look like a DOS game, which they mean as a compliment, but I think those people probably just need to play more DOS games. I think the worst thing about this game is just dying. Every time you die in this game, it just hits you. I don't know why, but it just really hits you in the frustration gland. Despite that, the game features some very good progression, and it's easy to get invested in the world. Some of the dialogue's pretty darn entertaining too. Like I said, I expect a lot of people will have heard of this one, for good reason, but I'm frequently surprised by how many people have missed it. It's now been released on several many platforms, including relatively modern ones, so there's no excuse not to try it out. Vlak, 1993. Vlak means train in Czech. Vlak is Czechia's pride and joy when it comes to language barrier-free DOS gaming. Vlak is basically Snake. Okay, Snake. Wow, Emmy. Fantastic. I'm sitting here several decades into my life. Why would I want to play Snake? Hey, look, sometimes a simple concept is all you need. I mean, admit it. How many hours did you spend playing Snake 2 on your old Nokia? Honestly, whenever I've managed to coerce anyone into playing this, they always end up getting invested. It's genuinely good. And it's honestly pretty difficult once you get more than a few levels in. People of almost any age can play it, but it's actually quite tricky to master. One thing that I really love about this game is the variety of items you can collect. It's a really eclectic and expansive collection, and they all have a different little carriage icon. The pixel art is just so charming, and the attention to details help demonstrate how well crafted this game is. Likewise, it's very interesting how creative the level design can get in Vlak. You'd think that this would be the kind of game that gets repetitive after 10 levels, but it keeps things pretty fresh. Sometimes you just pick up one too many items or take one slightly wrong turn and you're buggered. That's it, you're done goofed. Not so easy now, is it? Bam! Boom! It's frustrating, but it's really rewarding to get it right. Give Vlak a play and tell me how far you get on a first run without cheating. And I won't believe you. Cats on Broombas, 2022. A new DOS game? Yes, people are still making DOS games, because DOS games are timeless. This one's adorable and you should play it. There are only 9 levels at present, but there are more on the way. The plot is simple. You're a young girl who's been left alone with a robot vacuum and some cats. Time for some self-induced play-based learning. The Broomba moves in a straight line until it comes in contact with an obstacle, then makes a turn. You're able to move the objects placed on the checkerboard pattern on the floor to influence where the Broomba goes. Your goal is to collect all the stars in each level. It's a pretty straightforward concept, but quickly becomes more complicated. However, you can technically brute force your way through most of the solutions, especially as the levels are quite small. As the game is quite short at present, I don't want to spoil the whole thing, but some levels actually have multiple solutions, which is something I really appreciate in puzzle games. You can find the current release on itch, but also wishlist the pending complete version on Steam. A level editor is also in the works, which I'm greatly looking forward to, as the environment the game creates is just enjoyable to play around with. I'll put links in the description for you. I really like this game. It's a simple concept, but it manages to be extremely charming. I'm so impressed with the DOS games that people are making in current times, particularly those that manage to utilise the EGA palette so artfully. I recommend this one to a lot of people, and I'm recommending it to you. Switch, 1995. Originally released for Atari ST, this game I encountered fairly recently. On first glance, I wasn't expecting much. For some reason, there are anime screenshots in the background of every stage. But hey, working through the levels to track down your ultimate waifu was its own reward, I guess. The game makes use of classic puzzle gameplay tropes, but instead of focusing on just one or two, it incorporates several at once. You deal with directional tiles, keys, teleporters, crumbling floor tiles, and naturally, switches. Switch has some really fun gameplay elements. Compared to a lot of puzzle games of this era that are quite samey, the level design and progression is fairly well balanced. I was originally expecting to play this one for about 2 minutes, but it kept me invested with the way it built on its mechanics and the personality woven into the level design. Sometimes you'll find yourself attempting levels more than once, because the game tries to trick you, but it's not in the way that makes you angry at the game. The levels are bite-sized enough that it just makes you go, "Oh, you cheeky little dev." This game is far more engaging than I anticipated. I do love it when you underestimate a game and wind up pleasantly surprised. It's not the most groundbreaking game of the bunch, but definitely a nice little puzzle game to spend some time with. Rescue Rover, aka Dognapped, 1991. Rescue Rover! There's 2 of them. The first one is a bit of an assault on the senses at times, so I'd probably recommend you try the sequel. They were actually released in the same year, which in retrospect makes the first one seem like a bit of a trial run. The protagonist in this game, Roger, seemed to have a bit of trouble with his peripheral vision and, working memory, so his poor dog keeps getting dognapped. By evil robots! It seems that this is just a normal part of Roger's everyday life. Despite looking in the opposite direction, he seems to sense his dog going away, but can't bear to look? Maybe he's got some kind of neck or spine injury. Sorry, Roger. You navigate your way through various levels, avoiding numerous threats like lasers and robots. It's a bit Soccer-Barney, but with more personality than most in that genre. There are a whole array of death animations, reminiscent of Dangerous Dave. In Dave, they seem quite fitting, but here it's a little bit jarring at first. Be forewarned, they also include the dog. The first game is very, very brightly coloured, and I generally issue out a seizure warning for these games. The second one is much more subdued, which can be a little dull in parts, but at least you leave a gameplay session without your eyes watering. And yes, you may find the sounds and menu screen reminiscent of another popular soft disk release. Speaking of, The game also has a mysterious theme song written by Bobby Prince. Music implementation wasn't finished for this engine, and I can't find evidence of the music track anywhere. Check these lyrics out.
Woof woof.
Ducks, 1998. Ducks was created by Tim Furnish, aka Hungry Software. It's a later DOS release, which is fairly easy to identify by the late 90s design choices. It's very similar to Lemmings in that there's a troop of tiny creatures you have to lead to safety by utilising a variety of mechanics. The game holds your hand quite a lot at the beginning, making sure that you're comfortable with the general laws of the Ducks universe. Then gradually, it gets more and more complicated. Just like Lemmings, when you do inevitably mess up, you simply put your ducks out of their misery. Like an omnipresent deity with a master's degree in pyrotechnics.
Honestly, Lemmings got pretty hard. Lemmings 2 in particular is a really difficult game. I can't believe how complicated those games are when you try to play them now. It's like I ain't got time for this. But you know what I do have time for? Ducks.
Lemmings is a nice nostalgic memory, but Ducks is for the modern casual DOS gamer.
Who's that? I don't know, but if you're watching this far into the video, there's a decent chance it's you.
There were several add-ons released over the years, with new levels and mechanics to explore. Christmas Ducks, World Wide Webbed, and Big to the Future. And, on the chance your new love for Ducks thoroughly consumes your life, the Ducks Editor Suite was also released, which allows you to edit pretty much every physical aspect of the game.
Okay, was there one game on that list that you'd play? One. If not, that's okay. If you need a stronger suggestion, I highly recommend checking out Cats on Broombas because a new demo has just been released in the past fortnight and it does look amazing. I highly endorse you check that out immediately. If there was a puzzle game that you played when you were young that I didn't mention, which is incredibly likely because there are literally thousands and thousands of DOS games, please let me know. Even if you don't know the name of it, I'd love to help you find it if I can. Thanks so much for watching and bye for now.